On this week's episode of the State Champs Esports Show, we're shaking things up a bit and bringing you a pair of interviews. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us for another episode of the State Champs Esports Show, brought to you by the great people over at Lawrence Tech, Army Michigan, and Hungry Howie's. Before we go into our first interview, let's take a look at some headlines. Amazon's path to total world domination hit a minor bump in the road as Crucible, their first major game release, is being put back into closed beta testing. The new free-to-play game is a team-based PC shooter that combines Overwatch with Fortnite. Due to negative feedback, they're going to retool the game, but don't feel bad for Amazon as their online role-playing game New World is still on track for release on August 25th. It was announced recently that the new Marvel's Avengers game will be one of the launch games for the upcoming PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. For anyone who buys the game on September 4th when it's released for the PS4 and Xbox One, will receive a free upgrade when the new consoles go on sale at the end of the year. Our last headline is the exciting news that the movie Scott Pilgrim vs. the World will be celebrating its 10th anniversary by returning to the big screen once theaters reopen. Although not based on a video game, many consider Scott Pilgrim vs. the World the greatest video game movie of all time. Ironically, the movie did inspire a much-loved video game. If you can't wait to watch or re-watch this modern classic until it hits theaters, you can stream the movie now on Netflix. Now let's check in with a special correspondent who did this interview for us right before the stay-at-home order.
Hey, this is Mark at the Great Lakes Comic-Con. I'm here with Jeff Lee, the guy that started the character Qbert. How you doing?
I'm doing good.
So tell me, how did you get into doing video games?
I had a friend named Richard Tracy who was art director at D. Gottlieb and Company Pinball. All the pinball companies were in Chicago area. And that's where I grew up. And he was art directing there. They decided, like most of the pinball companies at that time, to go into the video game business, which was the common thing. So he knew I was a gamer. And he asked me if I wanted to be the video graphics artist for their new division.
So how did you come up with the idea for the character Qbert?
I was a big fan of MC Escher, the Dutch artist, and he did a lot of optical illusions and that sort of thing. So I was familiar with the tessellated cubes, which is predates him actually. It was inevitable that I would put that up onto a screen because I had previously been rendering that kind of stuff, on paper. Once it was up on a screen, the programmers looked at it. We thought, oh, this should be a game. So Warren Davis took the cubes, and we had a pyramid, and he did a programming exercise where the balls would fall down, and they'd go one way or the other. It was a very binary concept. And then he asked, oh, do you have some little character jump on the cube? So that's where Qbert came from. But he didn't have that name at that point. So he was just a round guy with a big nose. My original concept was he would shoot boogers out of the nose, hence the early name Snots and Boogers. But Warren was classier than that and said, no, we're just going to have him jump around.
First an arcade game, now my own home video game. I'm ready for anything.
Did you ever think that this game would stand the test of time as it does?
We didn't really think about that, so I suppose we didn't. We're quite surprised and very pleased years later that it's gotten a lot of love from retro gamers over the years. It's a big part of their youth in many cases. And then when those people grew up and became collectors or artists or programmers themselves, or went into animation business, here Qbert would appear on like Family Guy or Simpsons and so on. And then later, when he was tapped for Wreck-It Ralph and Pixels, it was like he was introduced to a whole new generation.
What's he saying, Felix?
Stand by, my Qbertese is a little rusty.
So Warren and I and David Thiel, who did the great audio, we're all just amazed and really pleased and touched by all that.
So what have you been doing lately? What do you got coming down the pipeline?
Well, I've been kind of touring this retro gamer circuit, which I had never imagined existed. So I've been creating posters and books and wrote a memoir about those times. I've been working on some game ideas. There's a young man who loves the 80s, and so he's doing one of my ideas, and so maybe a year from now, Mark, we'll have something. We're going to do some riffs, I think, on Q*bert, but do something in that vein.
Sounds fun. Anyways, Jeff, it was a pleasure talking to you, and
Nice talking to you, Mark.
this is Mark at the Great Lakes Comic-Con.
All right, thanks, Mark. Now let's switch gears and head over to an interview I recently did with a couple of guys helping to bring esports to downtown Detroit. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me, guys, Alex and Jacob. And if you guys could just give our viewers a little bit of a refresher on what Replay Cafe is all about, what it's going to be, and what really drove you to get it started.
I would say my entire life I've just wanted to play video games for a living. So for the last couple of years, I've been researching these gaming lounges and how to get involved. You know, I've tried my hand at streaming, but I'm just not quite good enough. Never had the opportunity to go pro on any game, no matter how many hours I devoted to it. So the gaming lounge aspect was sort of cool, and I had already started a different business, and I was like, business is so easy. I'll just open a building and let people play video games in it. It'll be great. Right. So that's sort of been my perspective on it. And then Jake kind of jumped on board.
Yeah, I kind of was the opposite of all of that, where I've never wanted to go pro at anything, but I do like to trash talk people from across a couch. And I've always wanted to have a community center where that was possible. So when Alex brought this up to me, I said, we gotta. Yeah, it was weirdly like complementary, where completely different goals, but also the exact same goal to create one thing. And that's kind of like, you know, an esports and LAN center in the model of what is currently very popular in California, New York, Boston, other urban cities. And we know that there's an audience in Detroit for it. And we want to be the first to really be able to provide it consistently. Because we know it's around here kind of, but someone has to follow through and give the big push to make it real.
When it comes to choosing Detroit, were you guys looking other places, or was this really like your heart was set on bringing it here and starting that community?
I think from the beginning, my heart was set on it. I think Alex probably was too, because we'd seen, again, similar and smaller ventures pop up in the surrounding neighborhoods. You see them in Ferndale and Royal Oak, even out in Sterling Heights, but we noticed that they were all kind of like, you know, they were in strip malls, or they were somewhere where there wasn't a lot of people, young people, the demographic that really plays these games don't gravitate to those places. And we already saw the city, of course, the narrative is coming back, which it is good. We want to be a part of it, but you know, we wanted to be there. We assume other people want to be there. It just made the most sense. It's our city. It's the big city in Michigan. Why does it not have something equal to what they have in Chicago or Boston or New York?
Like, elaborate a little bit for me. I know you guys are planning on having like computer stations, some places for like board games, D&D, Magic.
Mm-hmm. All of it's still in the works, and our goal was to be like a gamer's haven. So to kind of cover our bases on every facet. If you want to play Warhammer, if you want to play Dungeons and Dragons, if you want to play League of Legends, if you want to play NBA 2K20, if you want to play Chrono Trigger, like we want to be able to cover kind of like the many decades of gaming from, you know, tabletop to console to PC, and to really be a social gaming place. So there's not really a specialty in the same way that I would say Ready Player One is a barcade where they've got food, drinks, and they've got a ton of entertainment and cabinet systems. And obviously, COVID has set us back a little bit, but we're still gearing forward. We're supposed to be open already, but that's fine. It's given us a chance to kind of experiment with what we want to do with the space, and put a little bit more distance between our stations and value a little bit more of that personal space and cleanliness in general.
We were going to start in April, and we were ready to go, but being able to have these extra 3 months, especially for me, because Alex has delegated me to be in charge of collecting all the retro consoles, just what I've been able to pull together as opposed to what we would have started with, it's so much bigger now, the library we're going to have. And for me, I just see this as a good deal, you know?
Right.
That kind of prep to really be ready for people on day one.
do you kind of know when you're expecting to open?
Well, formerly our website said April 2020. We have now, we've relented on that a little bit. We were a bit overzealous, and we're gonna say fall 2020 right now. I'm hoping earliest September. We just talked with Rocket Fiber, who's doing our internet. They said we should be done getting all the hardware in by end of the next week. So after that, it's a matter of just when do the PCs show up at the door, and then we should be good.
So you guys have like clearance to open then?
Yes, it took a minute. The city of Detroit stopped permitting construction, and that did hold us up in a real bind. But
So I would say we're looking and crossing our fingers between August, September, somewhere in that time frame.
It was so great to talk with Alex and Jake with Replay Cafe, and I can't wait to catch up with them again once they get closer to their opening date. That's all the time we have for this week. As always, we ask you to show some love to Lawrence Tech, Army Michigan, and Hungry Howie's for everything they do for us. Have a safe and happy 4th of July weekend. For State Champs Esports, I'm Candace, and we'll see you next time.